What is going on, internet world? My name is Tommy. You probably know me as Rivet, and I'm your coach of the Atlanta Braviers. And I am here with Naim. Say hello, Naim. Is that how I say that?
It's Naim, but I'm null to it. But yeah, I'm Naim. I'm the coach of the Celta Victinis, and I'm also a mod for the MPBA.
All right, and we are here bringing you guys some power rankings for the NPBA Kanto division, the division that I am in. Naim is he's just a mod, or he's a mod. He's not in this division, but he still got some great insight as to the teams for this division. So this is, I believe, the most competitive division. All the teams in here are very, very strong. So jumping into this, we're just gonna break this down team by team. We're each gonna give our thoughts, and I believe each of the slides has each of our rankings on it. And at the end, we'll give a quick recap as to our complete rankings for everything. So, Naim, do you want to kick us off for the first team?
Yeah, before we start, I think it's important to mention how each team in this division was ridiculously good. There wasn't really a bad team in any of the teams, really. They all had their strengths and weaknesses, just somewhere. You had to do a lot of nitpicking to find anything bad with a lot of the teams.
Yeah, absolutely. It was so tough to come up with a definitive ranking for all these because they were just all so strong, so tough, and close together. But with that out of the way, let's hop into this. So the first team that we have here is the Evergreen.
The first team.
All right, sir, go for it.
So, I think this team, having first seed these are organized in seed order. So the first team we're mentioning had the first pick and so forth, so forth. So I think it's important to mention that because, as you can see, the first pick was Dragapult, which I think is personally the best pick you can have in a league where things like Mega Alakazam, the Mega Latis are all banned. So I think Dragapult's an incredibly strong round one pick. That's followed up by Gliscor, who's incredibly strong defensively, provides a lot of support for the Dragapult, can set up the rocks, the hazards. And you see this a lot with the team where each Pokemon is built to support this Dragapult, and it's kind of very well built around the Dragapult to get it in safely to do damage.
Yeah, absolutely. This team is so strongly built. Each mon complements each other so well. Gliscor plus Vaporeon and Galarian Slowking is just such a nasty defensive core that handles each other's weaknesses so well. And each provides fantastic momentum. This team has such fantastic momentum in its offensive and defensive core. Just to get Polton or Galarian Zapdos, we haven't even touched on that thing yet, but that's an absolute monster. And it's got like no switch.
That's a monster.
Yeah. So this team, it just has so many options to get into each other, and they can just survive for so long with just Wish and Toxic Heal and just Regenerator. But being able to pass Wishes into stuff like Pull and Zapdos, Flip Turn into those, set seeds or anything, it gives great longevity to these mons that are going to be chipping themselves down with like Life Orb or Hazards or Recoil. So very, very good in that sense.
Yeah. I think the only issue I really found with the team, which was, again, me being a bit harsh, was I think the first two Pokemon, which I think are the most powerful on the team, are both weak to Ice. And then there's also Pokemon like Zarude, Galarian Zapdos, or Boltons, which none of them really want to take an Ice move. But I think the team also has enough Pokemon to just deal with that with the Vaporeon and the Magmortar and the Steelix. But I think it's just important to mention how both the Gliscor and the Dragapult, who are going to be key Pokemon in this season, are both weak to the same type. But I think the team's got great hazard sets with Gliscor, the Steelix, the Swirlix can set up sticky webs. Don't sleep on that thing. And it's also got clearance with the Comfey, the Gliscor again. And just got great support all around. I think this is going to be a strong team. We both put it at fourth, so you can see how we both consistently think it's a strong team in the season.
All right, so yeah, I guess we'll move on to the next team. In the order, we got the Flying Fur Alligators, coached by Jiggy-Poo, I believe. So this team, again, starts off with an incredibly strong Dragon and Kyurem Black. No Scale Shot, no Dragon Dance, just some standard complex bans. But this team's offense is so strong. With Kyurem Black and Mega Diancie, and some great defensive options with Corviknight and Slowking, again, offering great momentum options to get into the huge wall breakers on the team. Also, it's got great offense as well in Crocodile and Roserade, which are two fantastic offensive hazard setters that, again, Kyurem Black and Mega Diancie are really going to enjoy. to allow them to break easy, or just any residual chip is so fantastic. Along with Vikavolt, setting webs is, Cure Black under webs is an absolute hassle for teams to deal with.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the team offensively has a lot going for it with the Kieran Black, the Mega Diancie, the Crocodile, the Vikavolt. But I put it very low down on the list, but that's not because the team is bad or anything. Again, it's got a lot of great offense. But I just think the speed isn't there. The fastest Pokemon is the Mega Diancie at 110. And the problem with your Mega being your fastest Pokemon is that you can get a lot of Pokemon just scarf it, and then you know you're gonna outspeed. If you get a Pokemon was after that, I think the next fastest thing's like the Crocodile or maybe the Blaziken or Kieran Black, one of those things. And if you get a Pokemon that's faster than those three, scarf it, then you know you're gonna outspeed everything on that team, and you can play around it very well. I think you can, and I think Kieran Black without Scale Shot or Dragon Dance is a bit. It's still a great Pokemon, but it's just. I think it's more personal preference. I'm not a big fan of it, but I can definitely see the strengths of the team with the power. The Corviknight's a phenomenal Pokemon on this team to take the hits, along with the Slowking. And even the webs can kind of help out with the speed issue. If you can get the webs up, you can send in your Korean Black, and that becomes an absolute monster, or your Moxie Crocodile.
Yeah, I think this team, like you said, the speed is definitely an issue, and not just with the speed peak of Mega Diancie, that's definitely one of the issues, but then even some of the faster stuff, like Crook and Roserade, those are all, they're bunched around, that 90 to 95 range, which can definitely be abused. If you've got some slower stuff, they can just run a ton of bulk on there, so you have something that's sitting at base 85 that can't outspeed anything anyway. Or except, that Blaziken's there, but you can run a ton of bulk on stuff that's going to make the breaking jobs of Huron and Crook so much harder. And then, getting up sticky webs is fantastic, but this team doesn't have a rapid spinner, so if they want to remove some hazards with something like Corviknight or I guess Blaziken, those are the only two real removal options. They're going to have to get rid of those webs themselves. And mons like Huron Black, they really don't want to have to run heavy boots. They want the damage output from something like Choice Band or Life Orb or Expert Belt or something like that. So that'll make Huron's job a little bit harder. So functionally, this team, it might run into some issues, but this team, just looking at it in prep, is super duper tough to take down. Just prepping for Kieran Black and Diancie is such a hassle because each of those requires a dedicated mon. You require a dedicated mon to be able to break Corviknight so that it can't just sit there and wall you out for days. Same with Slowking. So this team, while there are some technical flaws that's going to make in-game stuff a little bit tougher if the opposing coach gets prep right, getting prep right in itself is going to be a very, very tough task. So definitely wicked strong.
I also think one important thing to mention as well is both Kieran Black and Mega Diancie, they don't really have anything that shared takes a hit from both of them. Because you send in, the only things I can think of are Toxapex and the Steel Flying types, and he has one of them which takes one off the board for everyone else. So the balls aren't really going to matter too much against this team. You're going to have to pack a Pokemon for the Kieran Black, another one for the Mega Diancie. Then you're going to have to start thinking of Crocodile sweeps, Blaziken sweeps. Vikavolt can hit very hard, especially, and if it gets agility up, that could be an issue. So the prep's going to be very important against this team. But I think if you get the right prep in, it's not going to be as much of a hassle, I think, as other teams on this list.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so we'll move on here into the Drampabande. I think I'm saying that right. I know it's a German name, I believe. And this team, for me, this was a really, really strong and scary team. Mega Gallade plus Landorus and Blacephalon, for me, is an absolutely insane offensive core, especially with the backbone of Pex and Registeel, and then just Raikou for additional offense and pivoting. Mega Gallade is, in top 3 offensive threats in the format, in my opinion. There's just no switch-ins to it, especially if it gets a sword stance up. Landoti, again, it does so many good things. It can pivot into Gallade and Blacephalon. It can just be incredibly offensive itself. And then, it's got some great reserve stuff. Pangoro down there is a completely underrated threat, in my opinion. Pangoro, an amazing dual stab, some great utility options, a variety of sets it can run. Drampa, the mascot pick for him. Specs, Hyper Voices, and Dracos, those hit really, really hard, especially after a Berserk. It can run, defensive sets. It's got solid natural bulk, and with stuff like Roost, it can sit there, farm some Berserks and hit incredibly hard. Tangela, again, an amazing defensive piece that works incredibly well with Toxapex and Registeel, a little defensive Regenerator core there, and then Masquerain for only 1 point in my brain is kind of nuts, because with the heavy duty boots, it's fantastic. It can quiver dance, it can set sticky webs, it's got a great move pool. So this team for me has some great value in the lower tier picks that just really complement the offensive stuff.
Yeah, I definitely agree in terms. I mean, I definitely agree with the point that Mega Glade's a top three offensive threat. It's such a great Mega. If you don't prep for the Mega Glade, you're gonna lose the fight. There's not really much conversation about that. I think the Landorus a great pick. It sets rocks. You can defog stuff away with it. It can do so many different things. And then the core of Toxapex and Registeel, I can definitely see being a pain. Toxapex covers the fighting weakness that Registeel has. Registeel covers the psychic weakness for Toxapex. And then Blacephalon and Raikou, both scary special attackers with the Drampa as well. But I think my main issue with this team was just, I think there's definitely a few Pokemon here that are pretty weak to ground, which for me is definitely one of the maybe the top 5 type in draft, between the Toxapex, the Registeel, the Blacephalon, the Raikou, which are going to be pivotal Pokemon in this team. All 4 of them being weak to ground kind of makes me think a bit less of the team, but that's again me just nitpicking here. But the team itself, incredibly strong. Their speed and the Mega Glade and the Raikou. And there's so much offensive power in this team. And even the Masquerain for 1 point is pretty mental with Quiver Dance, Sticky Webs. I think it's going to be a great team. It will definitely be pulling off some interesting stuff. I'm excited to see what it can do.
All right, so moving on to the next team. We got the Indianapolis Infernas, coached by the Kangas kid. This team, it's very, very strong. There are some weaknesses with it. Straight out of the gate, the first pick, Landorus Incarnate, with Sheer Force. I personally haven't seen it a whole lot in draft. I don't know how strong it's going to be. It is incredibly versatile. It can do a bunch of different stuff, but oftentimes it's just pigeonholed into that special wall-breaking role, and you lose a little bit of the utility that Landorus can provide with hazards and momentum and stuff like that. But otherwise, this team, very strong defensively with stuff like Mega Aggron and Chansey and Milotic. But it can be broken down. This team doesn't love fighting types. Obviously, Landorus would be one of those key switch-ins to something like a close combat. But if he's running an offensive Landorus, he's not going to take a close combat or anything against something like Norvern. Doesn't want to take a close combat plus Ice Punch. So this team just really struggles with basic coverage moves. Close combat plus Ice Punch with something like a Swords Dance set. That's found on a variety of things. It kind of runs this team. It severely messes it up. Wishing into Mega Aggron from Chansey is a great option. Obviously, he has to run Wish. He doesn't get the luxury of soft build or anything like that. And then Entei is a great mon. Sacred Fire hits incredibly hard. With getting it in, maybe kind of hard. He'd have to run something like a U-turn Uxie or Noivern's a great pivot. But he doesn't have great removal. If he does want to run Defog, it's on Noivern, so he doesn't get to run like a spec set or anything to threaten. He could run it on Landorus, but he's probably not going to. He'll be running that offensive set since it is his premier threat. And then Spinda is like the worst rapid spinner in the game because he'll be lowering his speed if he's running contrary, so he can't do anything with that. So yeah, that's my take on it, at least.
I mean, I've seen a bit of Landorus Incarnate, especially last season in Season 2 of the MPBA, and it's an absolute monster. I think it's one of the best wall breakers in the draft because nothing switches in. If you don't resist the Sheer Force Earth Power, then from a Life Orb Landorus Incarnate, then you're in trouble. But I think that's really the only terrifying offensive threat because I think the Entei can definitely be prepped for easily, and you could wall it with certain water types, certain ground types. And I think Noivern, although it can hit hard, especially, you're gonna need. I think you can prepare for it, and you can take it out very easily. But I think the team's packing a lot of defense with the Mega Aggron, the Chansey both being able to set up rocks. I think Chansey can set up rocks, and then the Milotic's there again to take a lot of hits. The Aromatize can provide some support. I don't think it's the greatest fairy type, but it can definitely do the job. I think Grottle was actually a bit of a weak pick in my opinion, because But with the Noivern, I don't think you need two. I don't with the Noivern especially. That's 3 Pokemon all weak, 4 times weak to Ice, and I don't think Grotto's that great of a Pokemon. Even for 2 points, I think there's better Pokemon around.
I think
I
Grottle
think
is
Uxie is
only.
a phenomenal pick.
Sorry, I think Grottle's just a
But
pure
gone.
a pure grass type. It's not grass ground, and with Eviolite it is pretty
Is it not
bulky, but
ground?
hmm?
It is bulky, but I don't think it adds much to a team that isn't already there because the team's definitely got a lot of bulk. But I think it could definitely do with another sort of offensive threat because even stuff like Scrafty isn't. It can definitely get the Dragon Dance sweeps, but from what I've seen of Scrafty, it's also very good, well ran, just bulky support stuff like Super Fang and Knockoff, and just kind of there to be a bit annoying but not punch massive holes in the team. I think the team's definitely got that defensive annoyance that everyone's going to find when they fight them. People are going to find it a bit difficult to break down the team, but I think the team isn't going to be doing too much back apart from Toxic Stalling or Landorus and Entei causing a lot of damage. And I think the team's definitely lacking some removal. I don't. The only things I think get removal are Landorus Eye and the Noivern, I want to say. And those two, you don't really want to be running defog on either of them. So it's going to be interesting to see how the team deals with stuff like webs or rocks. But I think the team will definitely do well. It's all down to how I think other teams will prepare for this defensive team.
Absolutely. Alright, so moving on, I believe next is my team, the Atlanta Braviaries. If you happen to watch my draft breakdown, you kind of know where I stand on this. In the draft, I kind of drafted like a meathead. I just grabbed some stupid stuff just because it was there. And I'm kind of partial to it, but Urshifu, Aegislash, Layla, and Vish are, 4 incredibly potent offensive threats that I don't think there's a single, defensive core in the game that can handle all 4 of those, especially with Sand from Gigalith. They just do so many things. They just mash teams, especially with stuff like Tornai in the back and Rotom Frost, giving pivoting, Moongus as well. While it's not a Volt Turner, Spore creates incredible momentum opportunities. Forcing stuff to go to sleep or forcing doubles. So the team is definitely incredibly offensive. There's no doubt about that. The defensive core is like a Moongus and Gigalith, I guess, but Sandslash can also be run defensively as well as Omastar. So there are some decent. I think I got some really, really good utility out of my lower tier picks. Stuff like Rotom Frost and Rapidash and Sandslash and Omastar for under 5 points or at 5 points. The amount of hazard control that I got, the amount of just utility. And Licky Tongue for only 1 point gives me some great wishing options to try to keep my Gigalith healthy. Try to wish into my big threats to keep them healthy as well. So I'm pretty stoked about this team. There are definitely some glaring weaknesses. Obviously, Tornadus Eye at 111 is not a good speed peak. I'm very aware of that. I do have the Scarf option, and obviously Prankster Shenanigans can be there, but otherwise, outside of Fish and Sand or Sandslash and Sand, the team's pretty slow. So,
I mean, yeah, offensively the team's not missing anything. Urshifu, Banded Wicked Blow hurts everything pretty much. Even if you resist it, there's a very few Pokemon are going to enjoy to take it because of the fact it always crits. Aegislash, you can run it defensively to be fair, but I think it's definitely at its best if you run it in some sort of offensive way, but you can definitely get some defensive use out of it with Toxic Stalling. And then Tapu Lele is phenomenal special attacker. Not much needs to be said there. It's not as good as I think it was in Gen 7, but nonetheless still a great Pokemon. And then Dracovish, I think you definitely need to put in the work to get the most out of the Dracovish. But I think it's a phenomenal Pokemon if you can set up the sand for it, or if you set up the sand for it, it's just going to come in and wreck a lot of things. And then the Amoonguss, phenomenal defensive Pokemon, I think. I think it's a very annoying Pokemon to deal with because of Regenerator and Spore. Gigalith is I'm guessing Gigalith's just mainly there for the sand, and I think it can set up rocks as well. Because I don't know what else it does, to be fair.
It's a decent defensive Pokemon. In Sand, it's a pretty solid defensive, especially defensive wall, especially invested. It does hit fairly hard, and I liked it with Amoonguss, with the pairing, because they fit pretty nicely together. Amoonguss is going to take up those big fighting of water. hits, and Gigalith is going to take on, the fire and flying hits. So it was a nice little pair, I thought. But again, yeah, it was mostly there because I was just like, ooh, fish and sand. I think yes.
That's fair enough. I think Tornadus is good at the job, like I think one or two jobs, but I think it's kind of predictable, especially compared to its Therian counterpart. But one thing that will definitely be interesting is to see some Prankster Tailwind set up, especially for the slower Urshifu and the Tapu Lele. That'll definitely be interesting. Rotom Frost is definitely a very good Pokemon. Gives you a Clearer, a Will-O-Wisper, Blizzard as well. If you want to be land on those quad weak dragons and the ground flying types on the other teams. Sandslash I kind of slept on when I originally wrote up my draft analysis, but then I realized it does get Sand Rush and it does also get Rapid Spin. So I think those two moves will definitely be making it useful on this team in particular. And I don't know much about Lickitung to be fair, but I do know Omastar is a great Shell Smasher and it can also set rocks as well. I think the team will definitely it's a great team. I ranked it 6th, you ranked it 5th, very closely ranked. But I think it'll just take a bit of work to definitely get the most out of it. I think it's just a very niche team. I do think the speed is a bit of an issue if you don't want to bring the Gigalith, because that's really the main thing carrying the speed, because Tornadus 111 is alright, I guess. Not as good anymore as it was before. But apart from that, everything else just kind of gets outsped by a lot of the other Pokemon in the game.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. So moving on to the next team, we got the Wisconsin Whiscash, coached by Sickbid. This team is very, very strong, very offensive, with a plethora of wall breakers. But there's just so many issues with this team that both Naim and I found. Mainly the first one is obviously the team's ungodly slow, except for Alolan Persian sitting at base 115, which is a great pivot with stuff like Parting Shot and U-Turn. It doesn't really give you anything. I guess you could run like an offensive set with, Gunk Shot and Knockoff, moves like that, or a nasty plot set, but usually it's just going to be a utility mon. And then below that, it's Dragonite at base 80, which does have setup potential, and the team does have webs with Dottler, but the team is just so slow, and that's just such a hindrance for it. Again, the offenses, like switching into Emma and Bulu and Heatran is pretty tough, and the defensive core is really solid with stuff like Buzzball and Heatran and Quagsire. But the speed tiers, man, it's just such an issue. The peak is terrible, a massive cluster around, 75 to 80. And then the only removal option this team has is Dragonite. And Dragonite almost never want to run Defog. Always wants to, be maybe he's like a bandit setter, usually just like, Dragon Dance with boots. So if rocks get up, they can chip down stuff like Heatran and Bulu and Buzzwole and make their jobs easier. Or if he wants to set webs with Dottler, then like if they can get removed easily, or he doesn't have a Rapid Spinner to keep him up. And his really only cleric is Blissey, which usually wants to run, other moves like Teleport and Rocks and Thunder Wave and all that kind of stuff. So it's just, from a technical aspect point, it does need some work. It needs some more speed. It needs cleaning potential outside of Dragonite, which can be stopped. But, from a prep side, figuring out how to switch into Emma and Heatran and Bulu and Buzzwole and Dragonite, that will be pretty tough.
I definitely think the team has it. It's going to be an annoying team to prep for because it has so many heavy hitters, and Mega Mawile doesn't punches a hole in most teams. Dragonite, if you let it set up, you're in trouble. I think the Heatran's an underrated offensive Pokemon because everyone kind of just looks at it as a good rock setter, a good Toxic Slowbro with Magma Storm to trap people. I think Tapu Bulu's phenomenally offensive, just lacking some moves that Rillaboom gets, such as the Pivot and the Grassy Glide. Buzzwole's another great physical offensive threat with Beast Boost. But I think the other issue I had with the team is the fact almost all these threats are physical, which I think you definitely want to have some sort of special attacker on the team. Because apart from Heatran, nothing else is really great, especially offensive. And if you bring, I don't know, like a Ferrothorn, that's half the team dealt with really, because it will just take most of those hits. So I think no big special, like designated special attacking threat is going to be a bit of a drawback to the team. And like you mentioned, the speed is horrific on this team, I think. Because even though Alolan Persian isn't that fast wall breaking Pokemon, it's just a fast pivoter, really. I think the core is very good. The cores are incredible on this team with Heatran, and Tapu Bulu, and Quagsire. And I do also agree with the fact that no clearance is going to hurt the team, especially the Dragonite, because of that multi-scale. People will be trying to set up those rocks immediately, and he's almost always going to be forced to run heavy-duty boots Dragonite over something like weakness policy, which is great for Dragonite because you can take a super effective move with your multi-scale, get the boost, and then wreak havoc with your offensive Pokemon. It'll be interesting to see how this team performs, but I think out of all the teams drafted, again, because there's so many strong ones, it's definitely the weakest in my opinion, just because of the speed, the lack of clearance, and no big special attacker.
All right, moving on. Next, we got the Gainesville Guard, coached by Coach Psycho. This team, in my opinion, is the strongest one in the draft. Naim ranked at second. This team is absolutely brutal. Mega Scizor is a fantastic pick. Pairing it with Clefable is just kind of brutal. And this team is just so strong. It's so versatile, and the momentum here is absolutely fantastic. It's going to be really tough to get a hold on this team. A Volturn core of M-Scissor and Rotom Wash and Moltres and Swampert and Heliolisk, Clefable can teleport out. Alakazam, I guess, can teleport out. It's just going to be so hard to keep this team, in check. And with dual waters and Swampert and Rotom that cover each other incredibly well and both provide pivoting options, it's ridiculous. Clef can do so many things. M-Scissor can do so many things. Moltres can do so many things. Moltres is an incredibly underrated one. I've been using that a little bit. And the amount of mileage you can get out of Moltres in physically offensive sets and especially offensive sets and just utility removal sets, it's ridiculous. And it pairs so well with Mega Scizor and Swampert. So I'm very excited to see how this team performs. I have incredibly high hopes for this team because I think just the composition is so strong. And everything else that you want on the team, it's there. It's got great rocking options with stuff like Clef and Swampert. I guess Duraludon can set rocks as well. It gets fantastic defog options with M-Scissor again, Rotom, Moltres. Alakazam doesn't have to worry about hazards. He's got strong breakers. He's got an amazing cleaner in Alakazam that can also nasty blood up. M-Scissor with Swords Dance obviously can be a fantastic cleaner with Bullet Punch. And then again, stuff like Toxic Croak in the low tiers. Liepard is a fantastic utility mon. He's got some really great stuff down there. So I think that whittling down this team is going to be really tough because he's always going to have a preferable matchup. Just being able to Volt Switch and U-turn out is so strong in draft. So I think this team is going to be brutal to deal with.
Yeah, I definitely agree. As soon as I saw the call with Mega Scizor and Clefable, I already thought if the rest of the draft is how it is from the first two picks, it'll definitely be a top two. The Scizor can be ran offensively. You can run it defensively if you want with stuff like Defog and Roost. Clefable, again, can do so many different things. You can set up with it. You can set up rocks. You can just be defensive. Rotom Wash does one or two jobs, but it does the job so well. And that, as well as Moltres, are two more defoggers who will keep hazards off the side of the field, especially with the threats of webs from the other teams we've seen so far. I think Moltres as well, with the addition of Boots, is a great Pokemon now. Fire Flying is a decent typing to deal with certain Pokemon. Flame Body is good for those fighting types if you want to burn them. The Swampert, just setting up rocks, will be a nuisance for everyone. And the Heliolisk Alakazam, I think, is something very important to mention because of the fact those are the two fast special attacking Pokemon, which I think will definitely be annoying some teams if they're not prepared for them, especially the Heliolisk, because I think that one goes over a lot of people's heads. And then Toxic Croak, I think, is a good Pokemon for 5 points. It's got a lot of good moves, but I think the stats just don't help it out too much. Liepard, Prankster, Ray just said that Prankster, have Prankster and then use utility moves such as Taunt. Bouffalant, I think, not sure what it does. I think it just does a similar job to Tauros. And Duraludon I think it's a bit of an underrated Pokemon because it can be good offensively. You can set up the rocks if you want it to. And the Go-Got's there, I think, just because they needed Grass type later on, and it's probably the best of a bad situation for 3 points. But I definitely think there isn't really anything wrong with this team. It's just I think the team at number one is so incredibly strong that I think it'd be unfair to put this team over it. But it was very close between them. But the team doesn't really have any major weaknesses. I think the team covers all the main points you need: versatility, speed, power, hazard removal, hazard setting, has good speed tiers. I think the team has it all. I think it'll go very far. I have high expectations, like you said, of this team as well. And I'm interested to see how it performs.
Absolutely. All right, so moving on to the next team, we got the Jungle Gang. So this team is very strong. Again, there are some weaknesses for this team. Zapdos is an amazing Pokemon. It's capable of so many things. I think Zapdos, without rain, it's kind of pigeonholed into a more defensive role. Just not being able to, reliably hit hurricanes can be tough, but it's so strong nonetheless. And then Galarian's Darmanitan, I believe it gets Gorilla Tactics in this league, which is an amazing pivot. Choice Band, Choice Scarf with heavy duty boots. It does everything fantastically well. Although when you see G-Darm, you know exactly what it's going to do essentially. So that can make prep a little bit easier if you have something like a strong water type that can handle G-Darm. Maybe something like a Gastrodon or a Swampert. That's or like a Seismitoad or something that's going to be able to switch into the two of those. That might be able to keep this team in check. Mega Gyarados, fantastic Mon. A great offensive and defensive typing with great natural bulk and setup options. So Mega Gyarados, I think, is a very underrated Mega. It's so strong. It can do so many things well for a team. And then Mamoswine is a fantastic offensive wall breaker. Again, Earthquake and something like Icicle Crash is a brutal dual stab with great coverage and stuff like Knockoff and Superpower. It can also set rocks, which is great. So this team, I think, it's definitely very, very strong. When it's just pretty slow at the same time. 115 at Cinccino is a solid speed peak. G-Darm has a fantastic Scarf option. But other than that, there's 4 Mons that sit below base 50 speed with stuff like Doublade and Credilli. There's really no Trick Room option on this team. I think the Delphox is the only thing that gets Trick Room, and that's pretty much it. And then again, his removal is okay with Zapdos and Florges, but sometimes they don't want to. Zapdos wants to run offensive sets. Florges wants to be a dedicated cleric. And that will really hurt something like Galarian Darmanitan, because if rocks stay up, it'll be forced to run boots, stuff like that. So this team for me, it's definitely solid, but it's not fantastic. It's not terrible, but just everything in this league was just so strong that it kind of just fell towards the bottom of the pack because there was nothing like fantastic about the team.
Yeah, I do think the team has a lot of good strengths in it. I think Zapdos is a very good Pokemon. Having an established defog this early is very important, I think. Especially when you take into consideration you have Pokemon like the Galarian Darmanitan, who you don't really want to be putting heavy duty boots on. You just want it to come in and destroy everything nearby. And then I think having it has so many just wall breaking Pokemon with the Darmanitan, the Mamoswine. If you let the Gyarados set up, you're in trouble. The Dragalge with adaptability can definitely do a lot of damage. Even Delphox, I think, is a very underrated Pokemon in draft. I think the Stab Fire, Stab Psychic, you whack some choice specs on it and it will do a decent amount of damage. I think Florges is a very good utility Pokemon. It's also got Defog. It's got Aromatherapy, and it will just sit there taking hits, which I think people will definitely find an issue with. The Blade, I'm not too sure what it does. I know you can put an Eviolite on it or put a more offensive item on it, so it does provide that versatility of what it's going to do. And then Cradilly, I think it's a decent Pokemon. It takes a lot of important type moves well, such as Scalds, which you really don't want. You don't really want any Pokemon taking Scald because of the high risk of burn. So I think having something that's immune to it with Storm Drain is definitely nice. You can also set up rocks, set up Leech Seeds. Armaldo gives you a spinner, and Cinccino is just a good pivot and a fast Pokemon. But again, I think the main issue with this team is I don't think the team works too well together. I think there's definitely a few dual types that are on a few different Pokemon, such as I don't think dual Ice was necessary with the Darmanitan and the Mamoswine. especially since they're just both offensive ice types. And then obviously the dual rock as well, which isn't a phenomenal type you really want to repeat too much. And I also think the speed isn't great on this team. I think apart from the Chinchino and maybe the Delphox, everything else is pretty slow. I think this team will definitely be relying on a lot of Mega Gyarados sweeps with Dragon Dance because it'll be difficult to establish some of their other heavy hitters into the game due to slow speed. But I do think the team has the potential. I think it could definitely do well in the right situations. And again, I'm excited to see how it does.
All right, so moving on next, we got the Leafy Boys, coached by Adam. This team is a complicated one for me. Obviously, straight out the gate, this team is incredibly strong with Tapu Koko, Melmetal, Como-O, Weavile, Gengar, and then it's incredibly tough to deal with a Regenerator Core and a Alomomola, Audino, and then Mega Sableye sitting there. But at the same time, there are some weaknesses with this team that just kind of hold it back, in my opinion. It's got, one rocker in Como-O, and that's pretty much it, I believe. It's got removal options in Koko, which doesn't want to, remove its terrain, doesn't want to run Defog, and then, Komala, I guess. Mega Sableye is a solid hazard deterrent just with Magic Bounce, and it can switch in fairly safely. But keeping hazards off the field is clutch for stuff like Weavile and Mola and Audino. Keeping Weavile healthy, keeping the Regenerator Core healthy, Hazard Stack is a pretty solid option to go against those. But at the same time, who does Adam care? Like Koko and Melm and Como and Weavile and Gengar, that is absolutely brutal. Koko pivoting into Melm or pivoting into Weavile is just ridiculous. Weavile just mashes stuff with Axel. The offensive synergy here is fantastic. Melm just completely shreds the fairies that Weavile and Como don't want to deal with. Same with Gengar. Como is just such an incredible mon. I believe, I don't know if Soul Blaze is allowed, or Clangorous Soul. If that's allowed,
I think it is.
It is? Yeah, so only 14 points with that option.
I think it is.
A bunch of other stuff. It can run Sub Belly Drum, Swords Dance, Scale Shot, Dragon Dance. It can run Iron Defense, Body Press, just Stealth Rock and defensive set. It's so versatile. Melm, again, so versatile with a decent Trick Room option. I don't believe there's Trick Room Teleport on this team, but, Audino can set Trick Room and then, go out. Mega Sableye would enjoy the Trick Room. So there's just so many threats you have to prep for on here. You don't prep for Koko, you lose. You don't prep for Melmetal, you lose. You get the Como-O set wrong, say you're expecting a defensive Como-O and Sub Belly Drum comes against you, you lose. Weavile, there's no switching to do, I'm sorry. He's got the best Weavile switching in the game, besides maybe Pex and Alomomola. So that's tough. Gengar, brutal. Mega Sableye, Calm Mind Sableye is so tough. Or just obnoxious Toxic Song Mega Sableye. And then he's got some fantastic utility in the low tiers. Oddno's fantastic. Komala's a great spinner. It's got a solid move pool. And then a Shell Smasher and a Boom Burst Spammer for only 1 point is kind of nuts. And then Pachirisu just because it's cute. But this team, I've played against Adam a lot. He's been in a lot of leagues that I've been in. So I think that this team objectively has some issues, but played by Adam, it's gonna be a nightmare for everyone else to deal with. So I know I shouldn't let my personal bias get in the way, but objectively, just the hazard potential is not good. But momentum based, he's gonna rely a lot on Regenerator doubling and Full Switch from Koko. So although it is in a tremendously strong team.
Yeah, I definitely see the issue with the hazards. I think the only main hazard setter I think is the Como, which you don't always want to run rocks on it. But I think even despite the hazards, because I think the addition of heavy duty boots made stuff like rocks not as useful. But just ignoring that, Tapu Koko is a phenomenal Pokemon. Phenomenal. Massive speed, massive versatility, good pivot. Can do a lot of damage. And then Melmetal hits like a truck. Double Iron Bash, if you don't resist it, then you're taking a massive amount from it, if not dying to it. Because nothing really switches into a Choice Banded Double Iron Bash unless you're like a Ferrothorn or like a Toxapex, something like that. Komodo, again, very versatile. I think it's a very underrated Pokemon out of all the dragons. I think it gets looked over a lot. But with the Omni Boost, the Belly Drum, you get rocks, you get the wide move pool it has, it will be an issue. Weavile, again, doesn't have many switch-ins, good speed, good power. You can band it, you can set up with it. I think Alomomola is a Pokemon I have experience with, and I think very good at its job, but it doesn't have that offensive pressure I think that other bulky water types can do with Scald, because Scald isn't doing that much damage if you're on Alomomola. And then Ordinos, they're just with utility. Gengar, fast special attacker, which again, like I mentioned before, I think most teams should try and have at least one. I think the Star Poison's good now with the prevalence of fairy types. Ghost types, nothing really resists that type too much. Mega Sableye, I think, is a Pokemon everyone kind of just forgets is there, but it can be a massive pain to deal with if you're not ready for it. With Magic Bounce, it can heal itself, it gets all sorts of utility moves, it gets Nightshade as well for consistent damage. And even the low tiers with Kamala rapid spinning things, Chatot, again, Boomburst spam is annoying. And I didn't even know this, but Hunter got Shell Smash, so glad you mentioned that. But I think I think the team has its issues, but I think those first four Pokemon are absolutely terrifying, and I think has enough bulk to back them up as well afterwards. So I'm interested. It'll be a team to watch for sure, and I'm curious to see how well it will do at the end of it.
All right, moving on next, we got the Subtoxic Slowbro, coached by J-Caps, I believe. This team, again, along with the Gainesville Guard Wars, they were the 1 and 2, for both of us, because this team is incredibly strong. Torn T straight out of the gate is a fantastic pit. It's phenomenal. It's capable of doing literally everything. Offensive sets, defensive sets, just with Regenerator and Boots or Helmet and Assault Vest, Specs. It does everything under the sun, and it does it fantastically. It's a great pivot into Mega Medicham, which is an absolutely insane wall breaker. And complements Hydreigon incredibly well. Those two really enjoy working together. Slowbro, another fantastic defensive pivot, gives them teleport options into Torn T or Hydreigon or Mega Medicham, and just a reliable pain in the butt mon to deal with. And then Ferrothorn complements Slowbro incredibly well. Gives them hazard support for Torn T and Medicham, which really enjoy the hazard stack to whittle stuff down and just make their jobs easier. So this team is absolutely brutal. The biggest thing for me about this team that makes it so good is that its defensive core in Slowbro and Ferrothorn and Gligar, and Licky for that matter, is so incredibly bulky with great longevity, but it's not passive. Gyro Balls from Ferrothorn or Power Whip, that's going to do a ton. Slowbro can toss off massive future sights to pressure stuff. Scald is going to do a lot. Gligar with EQ, it can set up with SD. That's really tough to deal with. So that's just, brutal. And then switching into M-Medi and Hydreigon, especially complemented by pivoting from Torn T and Slowbro, or Hydra can run U-turn. That's just going to be an absolute nightmare for teams to handle, especially under Sticky Webs from Slurpuff if he wants to run that. Or just, the pressure of Belly Drum Slurpuff in the back with Unburdened. That's always there. It's not just a defensive fairy. It can sweep teams. So preparing for this is going to be an absolute nightmare. The speed tiers are fantastic. Again, Torn T is a fantastic speed tier at base 110 with very solid layering all the way down. Obviously Slowbro, Pharaoh, kind of slow, and Licky and all that, but the tiers are solid. And then great, Licky is a fantastic mon for only 5 points. It's kind of shocking to me. It does so much. It's a fantastic cleric, a great wish passer. It gets a very cool move pool, can swords dance and everything, or just constant damage with Seismic Toss. So this team, absolutely brutal. Like the Gainesville Guard Wars, incredibly high expectations for this team just because it can do so much, and it absolutely should because it is nasty.
Yeah, this team. I was looking at the team. I was just wondering who let them draft all this high quality Pokemon. I mean, Tornadus Therian is a Pokemon I wanted, to be fair. It's an insanely good Pokemon. Regenerate a U-turn on a Pokemon that's like, 120 base speed, something like that. It's so annoying to deal with. Mega Medicam, incredibly good wall breaker. It's so hard with huge pure power, I think it has. And then Slowbro, phenomenal defensive Pokemon, works so well with the Ferrothorn. I think the Hydreigon is a very good specialty offensive wall breaker. You can put specs on it, you can scarf it. And there's definitely been a few weird Hydreigon sets coming out over the years that I think could definitely get some usage. Again, Ferrothorn works very well with the Slowbro. It can set up hazards, Leech Seed. It can do a lot of damage to Pokemon who rely on contact moves, or multi-hit moves such as the Urshifus. And I think it'll definitely be good for whittling down Pokemon. And then you have stuff like Gligar, setting up rocks, defogging. Gligar is a good physical wall. I think it won't be a Pokemon that comes every week, but I think when it does come, it will definitely be a Pokemon to consider as a threat, just because it can even set up Swords Dancers if you really want. Slurpuff gets webs, which I think a lot of people forget. I think the Umber, the belly drum threat is big. You can even use stuff like Wish passing, or you can just Toxic Store with Wish Protect and Toxic. Licky, like you said, is pretty good value for 5 points. I don't really know what it did before the draft side, but people started explaining, and it does do a lot of things. Cryogonal, fast spinner, doesn't really do a lot else because of the narrow move pool it has, but it does do that spin job very well because of the high speed. And Ice Beam's obviously good for those dragons. Raboot, I mean, the only thing it has going for it really is the Libero threat, but I think it'll definitely be a decent fire type. I think it was just kind of drafted because there was no fire type on the team to complete the core. And I think Vespiquen can do Quiver Dance stuff. I think, not too sure. But I definitely see a team. When I saw this team, I thought it was a massive threat. It has so many good Pokemon. Every Pokemon on this team does a job. No Pokemon is really like a redundant pick. You just don't. I don't see any of these picks and go, why did they draft that? I think almost everything here has a very important job. They have most of the hazards. They have so many forms of removal. And I think this team, just like the Gainesville Guard will, is definitely one to watch. The team alone is what I expect to see something in like the final or something like that of the league. No pressure, but I'm definitely interested to see how far the team goes. I think Team Reed doesn't have a weakness, and I'm glad I'm not fighting a team like this. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this team performs in the end.
All right, moving on to the next team. We got the Albany Abomasnow. Yeah, this team definitely spooky. Mew and Mega Aerodactyl is very, very tough. Mew obviously capable of doing so many different things incredibly, incredibly well. It's a phenomenal defensive Pokemon. It can set up in a variety of ways. It can pivot out for something like Aerodactyl, which is a fantastic cleaner, one of the best in the game. The Scizor, obviously, again, another fantastic cleaner, great defensive typing, and an incredibly strong U-turn pivot into something like Mew or Aerodactyl. And then Infernape, obviously, again, another fantastic pivot that just complements those. Incredibly potent mixed threat with Sword Stance and Nasty Plot. It can set rocks, it can slack off for recovery. And this team is just super duper solid. P2, again, a massive defensive threat, a great teleport option into something that Mew or that Mega Aerodactyl. And then, Seismitoad, one of the best rockers in the game. It's super reliable, great defensive typing. The speed tiers on this, fantastic speed peak, obviously, with Mega Aerodactyl, and he's got a bunch of stuff that can run Scarf incredibly well. He does have a Trick Room option on that P2 if he wants to run it with something like Guzzlord or Avalugg. And then he's got solid, a solid rocker in Toad, and he can run it on Mew or Aerodactyl as well. And then he's got a bunch of defogging options. Some of them don't super love running it sometimes. Sometimes Rotomo wants to run a Nasty Plot set, or Scizor wants to just run Choice Band. So this team for me is super duper strong. Again, with some great utility in the low tiers. Basculin's a really good flip turn pivot with adaptability. Avalugg's a great Boots Rapid Spinner. And then Clefairy can just do so much with Eviolite. So very, very strong team.
Mew and Infernape, you never know what they're gonna do because they're so versatile. They have so many different options you can run with them. The Mega Aerodactyl's a great offensive wall breaker. It's got Tough Claws, Dual Wing Beat, Tough Claws Double Edge if you want to be that guy. You got Earthquake, Stone Edge. Scizor, again, can do a lot of different things. It's nowhere near as good as its Mega, I think, but it can definitely do some stuff very well with Bullet Punch. It's got Pivot, it's got Technician boosted moves such as Bug Bite and Dual Wing Beat. I think Seismitoad's a great rocker, Rotomo's a great clearer, as well as Will-O-Wisper and another pivot Pokemon. Porygon 2's got a lot of good defensive options. It's an annoying Pokemon to take out, as well as Clefairy. I think the two Eviolite users will make the team a bit prevalent to knock off, but I think there's enough Pokemon to deal with that with stuff like the Guzzlord afterwards and the Mega Aerodactyl Mew. Well, Mew using another Pokemon is actually weak to knock off. I think Guzzlord's got a lot of HP, but doesn't really have any other stat going for it. Avalugg's great physically defensive Pokemon. Ice isn't the best defensive typing, but I think it's a good clearer. It can take a physical hit very well. And then Basculin's kind of decent on the offense. But I think the main issue of this team is just nothing stands out. Like, there isn't anything. Like, all the Pokemon are good, but there's nothing like crazy offensive or crazy defensive. They all just do a lot of different things. So it'll be interesting how that factor plays into the team. But I think the team is definitely a top team in the division. But again, with so many good teams in the division, it's kind of difficult to rank it higher than seventh, in my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. All right, so moving on, we got the Ann Arbor Ampharos, coached by Joey D. I don't really know what it is, but this team again, incredibly strong team. That's subject to just how strong the division is as a whole. Deoxys S is incredibly prevalent. Great offensive mon. Base 180 speed is always so tough. It's so hard to revenge kill it. You kind of have to throw a scarf onto something incredibly fast in order to handle it. No nasty plot makes it a little bit less of an offensive threat, but since this league does allow cut moves, besides hidden power on pursuit, it does get the option for Psycho Boost, which is an incredibly strong nuke to just drop. If he's got a dark type, focus misses there for that. It's got a fantastic move pool. It can be a great hazard setter, or hazards lead with stuff like taunt, stealth rock, spikes. It can teleport out if he's feeling cheesy. It is a psychic type with some decent defenses. HP is obviously pretty miserable, but it does a ton for his team, and it's just a great building point. Stuff like Garchomp is just, Garchomp is Garchomp. It's such a huge threat. Does a variety of things. Feeney complements Chomp incredibly well. Hawlucha in combination with Misty Surge from Feeney is absolutely a hassle. And then, Steela, again, is Steela. It works pretty well with Feeney and Garchomp to just create an absolutely nasty Fairy Dragon Steel Core. Provides a little bit of longevity for Feeney because obviously Feeney doesn't really have solid recovery options except for Draining Kiss, but Leech Seed from Feeney, or Leech Seed from Steel can definitely help that out. Mega Main, fantastic Mega, only 8 points, which is I thought it was an absolute steal. Fantastic pivot into something like Garchomp or Deoxys or Steela, with a mediocre move pool. With Signal Beam is there for a little bit of added coverage. And then Drapion, a fantastic Toxic Spikes option. Really, really helps out Garchomp, Deoxys S. Misty Surge does, kind of hinder that a little bit, but if he's not running, Tapu Fini, or he can run Telepathy if he really wants the Toxic Spike option. So this team, very, very strong. Fantastic speed peak. The team, for me, here's the issue with the speed. The speed is so strong up at the top of the thing, at the top of the team, but then, after that, it's just so fast. It's too fast with Deoxys and Unburdened Hawlucha and Mega Manectric. If there's a solid Trick Room option team out there, this team is going to get smoked because he has nothing essentially that wants to come in and handle a massive Trick Room threat. He can run like minus speed Celesteela, but something like that's not going to be able to handle like a Mega Mawile that's like Swords Danced Up and Thunder Munching things. Appleton is not going to handle something really well. So I know that the coach was really like about the speed. I think it goes a little bit too far. I think there's such thing as a team that's too fast, and this is that one. So that being said, if that scenario doesn't happen, the team is super duper tough with a bunch of stuff that's going to be super hard to revenge kill. A great combination of bulk and offense with some solid hazard potential from Deoxys and Garchomp and Kabutops. So it doesn't have super fantastic removal. Kabutops doesn't want to come in every match, and Fini often doesn't want to remove its terrain. Excuse me. And he can run like something like Defog Hawlucha, but otherwise, that's never really going to happen. And then he's got some solid pivoting options in Mega Man and Hawlucha if he wants to run U-turn, but otherwise he's just going to be doing some doubling or just counting on revenge killing.
Yeah, I think the main reason I did rank the team as high as I did was just because of the speed. I think having a team that fast, Deoxys' speed is already something very difficult to prepare for. I don't think anyone in the league took Regieleki, which is the only thing faster than it. Because even then, there's Scarf Pokemon that don't outspeed the Deoxys speed. So you can really play around with the EVs you put into Deoxys. So you don't even have to put a lot of speed into it to outspeed most teams. And then Garchomp, phenomenal Pokemon. Scale Shot's something that makes it very scary because of the speed boost it gains from it. You can set up rocks. You can play around with the rocks with Dragon Tail. You can run it offensively. You can put choice items on it. It does so many things. Tapu Fini, is a pretty good type in my opinion. I think the potential for just scolding. Well, actually, to be fair, Scold isn't as good in it because of the misty terrain, I think. But it's still, I think it's mainly there just for the Halucha threat because of misty terrain. But you can definitely get some Carmine sweeps with it. You can just sit there taking hits. Defog isn't as good as it was on it now because you can clear off the misty terrain. But I think it's an interesting Pokemon. Halucha, great threat in the misty terrain. Unburdened Swords Dance Haluchas sweeps most teams. The Celesteela's taking hits. It's an annoying Pokemon to deal with. I hate fighting it. Most people do because of the fact it gets Leech Seed. It can set up hazards of its own. Has a decent move pool. Mega Manectric, I think definitely value at 8 points, but I think it's just another Jolteon really. You just need to find a ground type really now to take a hit because of the loss of the hidden power. Drapion setting up Toxic Spikes could be kind of redundant from the Tapu Fini, but I think it's definitely still a good Pokemon because of the typing it has. You can set up Swords Dart, Sniper moments with it. Appleton, great Pokemon in my opinion for 7 points. 2 key typings there. Thick Fat helps out its weak. It can take a fire hit well now because of that. Ice type moves are only 2 times effective now, I think. So 4 times with Thick Fat. And then Regigigas, you can do some stuff if you can last the 5 turns of slow start, but I think it won't come too often. And then Kabutops is there with hazards. I think it can remove them as well. I think it's not as good as Omastar in my opinion because you'd rather run it physically than specially offensive, and it doesn't get the benefit of Scald because of that. But I think the team definitely has good speed. It has some interesting bulky Pokemon. I just think it has some good synergy going on as well, but I do agree the point that it's a bit too fast because Trick Room, it's not going to have anything to counteract the Trick Room barring the Celesteela. So I think most teams will try and gun for that point if they have a Trick Room setter. But I think the team will work. I think it'll do pretty well. And I think the high speed is just really what pushes it into outside the bottom 6 teams in my opinion.
All right, so moving on next, we got the Salt Lake Seadra, coached by Bad Guy Cam. This team is very, very strong. Straight off the bat, Zeraora is such an amazing threat. Amazing speed tier at base 143 and a plethora of options that it can run physically offensive, specially offensive. Fantastic pivot with Volt Switch. It can set up in both aspects with Bulk Up and Calm Mind. With a fantastic move pool. Plasma Fist is just such an incredibly spammable move. MVNU, fantastic defensive Pokemon. Works very, very well with Salamence and Metagross. It can set seeds. It's a very just bulky, obnoxious Pokemon with Synthesis. Very non-passive as well. Giga Drains and Sludge Bombs, Earth Powers all hit very, very hard. Knock off your utility. Salamence, incredibly versatile mon. Obviously a fantastic Dragon Dance sweeping threat with heavy duty boots. And Intimidate and Moxie either to steamroll or to get that opportunity. It's also can run very defensive sets. It's a great defogger with heavy duty boots. It can run stuff like Roost or Wish for longevity. Intimidate can just let it act as a phenomenal defensive piece. So Salamence is one of the most slept on defensive threats in the game, in my opinion. Metagross, Seal and Psychic, fantastic typing. It is a little overvalued here. Bullet Punch can be really strong, especially in conjunction with something like Choice Band. And it works well with MVNU and Mence. Umbreon, fantastic mon, works incredibly well with MVNU. Gives some longevity to Metagross. It can Wish Pass into it and just provides a fantastic cleric for the team. Talonflame, Talonflame, just a great utility mon, a fantastic fast pivot at base 126 speed, letting him get into Zeraora or Salamence to set up. Alola Tails for this team I think is fantastic. It gives a fantastic setup opportunity for Salamence and Zeraora with Aurora Veil. So there's always going to be that threat of Mence getting in behind Veil and setting up a DD and just going for it. Donphan gives fantastic hazard control with Stealth Rocks and Rapid Spin on the same thing. A fantastic move pool as well. Knock off, Earthquake, Stone Edge, Power Whip, Gunk Shot, Ice Shard. It's a really good mon, really slept on. Arctifish obviously takes advantage of the hail. Galarian Corsola, you know what it's going to do. It's not nearly as good as it once was with the prevalence of knockoff, but it can be annoying if your team doesn't have the right pieces for it. It's another good stealth rocker. And then Zangoose is a solid normal type with the Toxic Boost ability, I believe, which can be pretty strong with Stab, Facades, and everything. So this team for me, the offense is fantastic. Defense, again, fantastic. his hazard control is pretty solid with Donphan and Metagross, Galarian Corsola, although he will have to rely on Talonflame for removal, I believe. Running Boots on Salamence isn't always preferred, and again, Alola Tails is almost never going to be running Boots. It's always going to be running that Light Clay or that Icy Rock. So for me, this team is super good. It just lacks that one huge big wall breaker. Obviously, Zeraora, incredibly strong, Metagross, Salamence, but they're going to be. It's tough to break down some other stuff. I think breaking down big steel types is going to be a tough task for this team to handle. So again, though, it is very, very strong. And I'm definitely excited to see how Cam does with it.
Yeah, I think Zeraora's incredible first round pick was a high speed. Electric types are good pivot option as well with Volt Switch. Mega Venusaur is still a very good Mega despite the fact it lost Hidden Power Fire. Earth Power is good, it gets Sludge Bomb, it gets the Stab Grass, it gets Leech Seed, it gets Reliable Recovery Synthesis. Although I don't know how good that'll be in the Hail because of the fact that I think it like halves the amount of health you usually get from Synthesis. But then you got the Salamence, which is an incredible Dragon type if you're not prepared for it. Scarf Moxie, Dragon Dance Moxie. You got special sets for it. You can run defensive Salamence, I've seen. Metagross is a good rocker. It's got a few good moves. I think it's not what it once was, but I think it's still a good pick to take. Umbreon, Great Wolf, an annoying Pokemon to deal with. Wish, Toxic Stall, Heal Bell, Foul Play is good on it as well. Talonflame again had a massive fall from grace from Gen 6, but I still think it's a useful Pokemon in the right situations. That priority Brave Bird whilst you're at full health is still good. You can roost it back up and take advantage of that. And Heavy Duty Boots has definitely made it a bit better than it was last generation, I think. Alola Ninetales, Fast Ice type, Fairy type's an important type. Aurora Veil's a phenomenal move, and he has a spinner to take advantage of his screens without taking them off. In the Donphan, which is also a great pick. I think it's a great pick for 9 points as well. It's got a good attack stat as well. Arctovish will just be taking advantage of the hail, but I think it's still a decent pick. It's not the world's greatest Pokemon, but I think it'll do the job here. Galarian Corsola, super annoying Pokemon, but I think you just really need enough knockoff users to deal with it, but it still can definitely be a massive problem for a lot of teams. And Zangoose, I think, is a good pick for 2 points. I think it's a pretty underrated Pokemon. It's not world-class or anything, but it definitely does that. It can definitely hit hard on the right situations. I think the main reason I just don't know, put it a lot lower is just compared because the Kanto division is so strong in terms of teams. I think compared to everything else, it just doesn't hold up. But I think it will perform pretty well. It will be interesting to see how it ends up in the end. I think maybe some FAs could be useful, but overall, I think the team has a strong structure to do well.
All right, next up, we got the Dutch Duosion. Mega Loudpunny in this league, being able to use Return in conjunction with all the new tools it got from the Isle of Armor is absolutely fantastic. An incredibly strong pivot and wall breaker, close combat, Return, it can U-turn out now. Fake Out is obviously fantastic, stuff like Triple Axle. So Mega Lopunny, with the addition of Return being allowed, is one of the premier offensive threats in the league. Combined with Latios, with that big pivoting option, Latios is such an incredible wall breaker and cleaner. Capable of doing a variety of things. It gets every move under the sun. That really complements Mega Lopunny. And Lopunny can help break down the big steals that Latios may not like. So Latios and Lopunny is an absolutely brutal 1-2. And then with the backbone of Skarmory and Incineroar and Lantern and Togekiss, this team is fantastic. Skarmory providing great hazards potential for that help out Lopunny and Latios. Incineroar, again, another great pivoting option into Latios. Capable of running heavy duty boots or just Assault Vest. With a great move pool again, and then Togekiss rounding that out. A fantastic defogger or just air/spammer. So this team is super duper duper good. Scolipede is a fantastic offensive threat in the late game with speed boost, can sword stance up, or it can just hazard stack. Spikes, Toxic Spikes, like Mega Horde Endeavor is fantastic lead, able to chunk something immediately off the gate, and help out Lopunny and Latios a lot. The strong, Mega Lopunny is a fantastic speed tier, and he does have Scolipede for additional, speed control. But the layering down from there, the tiers aren't super fantastic. But then mons like Lantern and Claydol give a ton of value. Lantern's a fantastic pivot. Claydol is an incredibly underrated mon in my opinion, capable of setting stealth rocks, removing them with rapid spin, teleporting out, and just doing a whole bunch of different things for the team. So this one, I didn't even mention Silvally yet, because Silvally can do literally everything. It's a little overpriced in this league in my opinion, but it still gives a ton of utility. Another fantastic parting shot pivot into something like Mega Lopunny or Latios. I can run so many different types just thanks to the RKS system. So I'm very excited to see how this team does. I ranked it 12th. The speed tier is not super fantastic, but Lopunny and Latios are really going to be carrying the brunt of the offensive potential for this team. That's why I have it ranked so low, just because while the team is very strong and works pretty well together, I think, Latios and Lopunny are going to be clamming pretty much all the kills, unless he's running something like Iron Defensing Skarmory or like Scolipede or like a nasty Plot Togekiss. There's not a whole lot of offensive potential outside of Lopunny and Latios, and so I still think that this team is going to be a hassle to deal with, but it's just a little bit one-dimensional in that aspect. And again, the Kanto division is just so strong that I couldn't just put it above some of the other teams that we've seen. But still fantastic nonetheless, and I'm very excited to see how it turns out.
Yeah, I kind of knew what the team was doing during the draft because I helped with him pick. Not where he didn't tell him what to pick, but I kind of confirmed a few of his picks if they were good or not. But I really like the team. I think Mega Lopunny's a great Mega. It's definitely a good round one pick, especially if you've got a later on seed. I think Latios is a phenomenal special attacker, has many different sets you can run. Got good setup as well with Carmine. Dragon Dance isn't as useful on it as it is on its Mega, but I think you can definitely get a lot of usage out of Latios. Skarmory, phenomenal. Still flying, phenomenal typing. I don't think it's as good as Corviknight or Celesteela, but it can definitely still do the job. Incineroar, great Pokemon in my opinion. It's pretty versatile, has a few different things you can do with it. Scolipede, speed boost is a phenomenal ability. You can set up Soul's Dances with it. You can't Baton Pass because that's banned, but you can still cause a lot of issues with the Scolipede. Lantern, I used it last season, got me out of a lot of situations. Phenomenal Pokemon. The two immunity abilities are good on it because you kind of have to put your opponent to store mind game of am I Water Absorb, am I Volt Absorb. Togekiss, great. I think it's a good Pokemon. Does the clearing job pretty well. You can get some Thunder Wave Air Slash moments. Silvally, I do agree. I think it's a little bit overpriced, but I think the fact you can have every single type in the game on this Pokemon, and you get stuff like Parting Shot, Defog. You can get some weird sets. I've seen like Flame Charge. I think it will definitely help the team rather than hinder it. Claydol is a massively underrated Pokemon in my opinion. Getting both spin and rocks, and then also having a decent variety of moves on it. You can get Cosmic Power up on your Claydol. And Meganium, I think it's just it's a good 3-pointer. There was no grass type on the team at this point. But yeah, I think where this team re-excels is its hazard removal and then hazard setting. I think it's got a good amount of Pokemon in general for that. I think the pivot is there as well with stuff like Mega Lopunny, Incineroar, Lantern, Silvally all get some sort of pivot. So I think there's definitely a few pivoting Pokemon on this team. Yeah, I do agree with the speed tier fact. I think mainly it's down the middle where there's not that much going on. And especially lower down, there's not much speed going on because there's a lot of fast Pokemon are like 80 to 100, somewhere like that. But lower down than that, there's not much to cover for those slow Pokemon to force them to speed creep things, and so they don't just run all bulk. But I do think the team's good. I think it's definitely holding up to what some of the other teams that have drafted in the division, and I think it will do pretty well.
All right, moving on, we got the Miami Delphox, coached by Back Luigi, I believe. This team, we both ranked it the third. It's incredibly strong. The front four Pokemon that he's got, Zygarde 50, Rillaboom, Rotopi, Primarina, is just an absolutely brutal pairing capable of doing so much. Zygarde is such a huge threat. It's so offensive, such a massive threat with Dragon Hits or Coil every single week. Also can run just fantastic defensive sets with stuff like Lair. Just its huge natural bulk. Then Thousand Arrows, obviously not going to be affected by grassy terrain from Rillaboom, so I love that pairing together. Rillaboom just provides a fantastic cleaning or wall breaking potential that pairs well with Zygarde, lets each other do various things, so they're not pigeonholed into the same sets every week. Rotom Heat provides a fantastic pivot along with Rillaboom to get into Zygarde or get into Primarina. Primarina, in my opinion, for only 12 points, this is absolutely absurd. I stand adamant by the fact that Primarina is one of, if not the strongest wall breaker in the game, because literally nothing switches into its dual stab plus coverage, especially in conjunction with pivoting options with Flip Turn. Primarina is just ridiculously busted. Subcall Mine is a ridiculous set with stuff like Draining Kiss. It can run Throat Spray with, Sparkling Aria, or like a Liquid Voice set if you're feeling cheeky, but Primarina in conjunction with Rotom Heat and Rillaboom and Zygarde, that's just absolutely nuts for me. I think that it's going to be really, really hard to contain these front four, especially considering what he's got in the back. He's got fantastic rocking options with stuff like Bronzong. Heligo, it also gets Toxic Spikes, which is fantastic. Mandibuzz, and just a brutal defensive piece, a fantastic pivot, a fantastic defogger, just a great utility mon with stuff like Knockoff. Sneasel for only 4 points, again, absolutely insane value. It's not Weavile, but Banded Triple Axles coming off this thing are going to hit like a truck. It doesn't hit as hard, but it still hits very, very hard. So again, Sneasel for only 4, just incredible value. And then, Gourgeist, I think he gets all the forms, which can be cool. So he's got a lot of, versatility with how he can run it. Hitmonlee obviously takes advantage of the grassy terrain and gives him an additional cleaning option if he doesn't want to run, something like a setup Zygarde. So this team, I think, it's got everything. It's got wall breaking, it's got cleaning, it's got fantastic hazard setting and removal. So the speed tiers are very solid. With various threats to, priority with Rillaboom and Unburdened from Hitmonlee. So I think this team, not as strong as the top two just because they're absolutely absurd, but this team, again, is just super duper tough. And I have very high expectations for it. I'm excited to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think this team's pretty broken. It's just the other two top teams are just that good. But I mean, Zygarde, Rillaboom, Rotom Heat, and Primarina are all absolutely insane together. Rillaboom, I think the fact he drafted one of the few physical ground types that don't use Earthquake really helps his Rillaboom, because there's no reason to not set up the grassy terrain, especially when you have stuff like your Nihilego running around that could perish to an Earthquake. But I think Zygarde, phenomenal sweeper. Very few things really want to deal with it. The only thing I can truly think of is like some of the Tapus, like Tapu Fini, Tapu Bulu. And then Rillaboom, great Pokemon. Grassy Glide is insane especially if you're banded. You can also run a few different other sets with it. Rotom Heat does one or two jobs, but again, it does that job very well, just like the other Rotoms. I think it's the second best Rotom form, probably. I think the addition of heavy duty boots definitely helped it out a lot more. Got clearance as well. Primarina, like you mentioned, Water Fairy, insane duo. It's got Scold, obviously, Sparkling Aria as well if you want to mix things up. I've definitely ran that a few times. And then Bronzong, I think is a pretty good steel type, to be fair. It's setting up rocks. Being off the ground is very useful as well for it. Nihilego, again, sets up more hazards. I think it sets up spikes and rocks. It's one of the few Pokemon that can do that. And then it can also just deal a lot of damage because of those. It has insane stats. That massive special attack, massive special defense, massive speed. And then the Mandibuzz, super annoying Pokemon. Again, some psychic immunities are really nice. Especially when you have two dark types in the Sneasel and they both do completely different things. One's offensive, one's defensive. Mandibuzz is also another defogger. And like you mentioned, Sneasel, although it's not Weavile, it still does a lot of great things. It still got all the moves Weavile has. It just doesn't hit as hard, but you can still Choice Band it. Still got good speed. Gourgeist, you can do, it's got both forms. You can run it a bit faster. You can run it a bit more bulky. I do think the bulky form's a bit better. But it's got the Leech Seed, it's got Will-O-Wisp, I think it's got Pain Split, I want to say. I'm not too sure on that one. But it's a great Pokemon overall. Ursaring it's not phenomenal because of the awful speed it has, but with Guts, Flame Orb, Facade, it can definitely catch opponents off guard. It's a massive wildcard on the team. And then Unburden Hitmonlee with a Grassy Seed is going to be a pain for everyone. It's another spinner, so he can keep his keep his hazards on the field as well as his grassy terrain. I think this team probably has potentially the best synergy of all the teams in the league. But I just think the other two teams have so much potential in them that it'd be a bit rude to draft it, put it higher than third. But this team, again, any other division would be the #1 team in the league. It's such a good team.
All right, and then I believe, last but certainly not least, is the Roaring Spiels, coached by Gabe. This team's very strong. Again, a little bit subject to Kanto being so strong. But, Kyurem, an absolutely fantastic wall breaker. And then Mega Sharpedo, complements that incredibly well. Fantastic cleaner, especially with no first turn Mega required. So those two, just a 1-2 punch, absolutely insane. Nidoking complements Kyurem really, really well, able to break down those big berries and steals that Kyurem often doesn't want to deal with. Cinderace, again. Kyurem can handle those bulky waters it doesn't want to handle with something like a Spec Stab, Freeze Dry. That's just going to absolutely send that thing for a ride. And then he's got fantastic, a defensive core with Deoxys Defense, Sylveon, Fortress, and Type Null. All fantastic mons that work very well together. Sylveon, obviously, able to spread some longevity to the rest of the team and to his offensive threats with Wish Passing. Stab Hyper Voices hit very, very hard. Or if he can run something like Moonblast, if he really wants that, if he's going up against like a Soundproof mon or something like that. He's got great hazard control. Deoxys and Fortress both able to set Toxic Stealth Rocks and Spikes. Fortress getting the Toxic Spike option as well. And then very solid removal with Fortress, Delmon, and Hitmontop. 3 great spinners, although he doesn't have any defoggers, so if the opponent team has a big bulky ghost type, maybe something like that Gourgeist that we just saw, hazards are up and they're there to stay because he doesn't have a single defog option. Type Null, fantastic pivot, especially for only 4 points. Fantastic utility mon that hits pretty hard and has some just fantastic defenses. It really appreciates the Wish Passing from Sylveon. And then, Jolteon's fast. It gives him a really good speed peak at base 130, but otherwise it gets hard shut down by pretty much all ground types. It can hit pretty hard with choice specs, but otherwise, losing hidden power, it's not very good. And Hitmontop, for only 7 points, fantastic. Hitmontop is one of the most underrated fighting types in the game, in my opinion. 2 fantastic abilities in Intimidate and Technician. Intimidate lets it be a really fantastic, just all-in-one defensive piece. With Rapid Spin, it can Toxic and Fake out, burn some turns. Or just with Technician, close combat's incredibly hard, and then Technician Bullet Punches, Mach Punches, Triple Axles. It's got other great moves like Stone Edge and Earthquake and Poison Jab. So this team, very, very, very strong. He's got great longevity, he's got a fantastic Cleric and Sylveon that can kill off Toxics from something like Deoxys or itself. He's got fantastic cleaning potential in Mega Sharpedo or maybe something like a Dragon Dance Kyurem. Because Kyurem is a very potent physically offensive threat. Specs obviously is such an easy set to run every week. But something like Dragon Dance with Icicle Spear, I don't believe Scale Shot is banned on this Kyurem. It's banned on Kyurem Black, but he can totally run something like Scale Shot, base Kyurem, which could be really solid. And then he's got fantastic hazard control. So this team for me, this was, for my ranking at least, it was subject to A, Kanto being so strong, and B, me not knowing how to separate all of just the fantastic teams who are in the middle. So this team, incredibly strong. Don't let my ranking fool you. So again, I'm really stoked to see how this team turns out. I think it's going to be really strong.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the team has a lot of bulky offense to it. I think it's also got a lot of good speed with the Jolteon on the Cinderace. It's got so many good wall breakers. I mean, I'm a bit biased, but Nidoking for me is one of the best wall breakers, and it's pretty cheap as well for how hard it hits. Because Nidoking's move pool is insane. It can cover for almost every type in the game, and if you get the right read with a Life Orb Nidoking, you can 2-hit KO a lot of the Pokemon in the game. Kyurem, I think that's a weird first choice. I think Mega Sharpedo was a weird second choice. But I think they paid off in the end because they did get a lot of strong Pokemon near the end. But I think it was definitely just a risky play. But having that last wheel definitely benefited them. Kyurem, again, you can run Scale Shot, you can run Bulky, you can run Offensive. Mega Sharpedo, you can, since you don't have the Mega first turn, you can actually wait out for the speed boost, get like a speed boost up, and then just Strong Jaw Crunch or Psychic Fangs or Ice Fang things. Deoxys, I think Deoxys' defense is solid. It's not my favorite Pokemon in the game. I think the late Guardians are a bit cheaper, and I think they do the job a bit similarly of setting up rocks and then setting up hazards. But then you get the Toxic use. I think it can set spikes, I want to say, and it also gets different stuff like Toxic. It gets, yeah. I think Toxic's the main thing just because of how fat it is. You can just Toxic stall things for days. Sylveon, I think, is an underrated special attacker, but it's obviously very good utility Pokemon. Wish, Heal Bell. Pixelate Hyper Voice hits very hard. Cinderace, it's not got that versatility that I think Libero is banned on it, but it's still a pretty good Pokemon nonetheless. It's got a few good moves. Pyro Ball's an insane fire-type move. Hits so hard. And then you got Fortress, a Rapid Spinner, Roxer, pretty fat. Jolteon, a good special attacker. The loss of Hidden Power did hurt it, I think. Was now any ground type pretty much walls it. And then Delmise, another good spinner. It's pretty much 3 types because of its ability, where steel moves have a bit like stab boost, I think. And Type Null, massively underrated. And I think Hitmontop is a phenomenal fighting type, especially for 7 points. Another clearer. And I think I just ranked the team low, just again based on how strong Kanto is. I think the main reason as well was so I think there's a few Pokemon here who all share common weaknesses, but I think there's also enough Pokemon to patch up these weaknesses, such as the first 2 picks being weak to fighting, but then you've got Sylveon and Deoxys, stuff like that. So I think the team's definitely synergized well. I think it's definitely a team to watch out for. I think it could be a bit of an underrated team as well. It was so hard to rank these teams, to be fair, but I think 13th was probably the best I could give it.
Yeah. All right, so I believe that's all the teams that we have today. Here's our final rankings. You can see these are my final rankings. I'll just run through these pretty quickly. Just, Gainesville Gardevoir is obviously super duper tough. Toxic Slowbro is right up there with him. Miami Delphox, just brutal all across the board with the Evergreen Grounds right there in second. Me in 5th, hopefully just, offenses can carry us. The Drampavande, very, very strong. Team Albany Obama Snow is very solid. Leafy Boys, incredibly strong team. Salt Lake Cedra, the Roaring Spiels, Flying for Alligators, Dutch Duosion, Indianapolis Infernas, Ann Arbor, Ampharos, the Jungle Gang, and then finally the Wisconsin Whiscash. So I can't understate how hard it was for me to rank these. I kind of just grouped them into types and to grades, and so I had the 2 teams at A, the next 2 were at A-, and then 5 through I think like 12 were all B+, and then from down it was similar down there. I only went down to B- just because all these teams were so strong. So all these teams are fantastic. Some of them, some nitpicking weaknesses that we found. But, I cannot understate how well of a job everyone did. So this is going to be a great season for me. I'm super excited to see how the teams actually play out in competition. We've seen some matches happen to start off that have really shown how strong some of the teams can be. But that's going to be it for me. I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, and then my rankings are, with the Toxic Slowbros, I think were number 1 for me. Then the Gainesville Guard was number 2. The Miami Delphoxes were very close as well, behind. The Evergreen Groudons, the Leafy Boys, the Atlanta Braviaries. Honestly, all the teams on this list are very strong in their own way. Some are obviously stronger than others, but none of the teams are really what you can consider a terrible team. I don't think any of them are going to be I think some teams are a bit outclassed by the stronger teams in the division, but there isn't anything I look at where I'm just like, this team is going to do absolutely horribly, because they each have their own strengths. But again, ranking these teams is probably the most difficult one as well, just because since it's the competitive division, it's for the players who all know what the best things to draft are. So everyone drafted a very solid team compared to some of the other divisions, and that did result in us having to nitpick a lot of teams, just looking for a weakness just for the sake of it. So I definitely think we got the short straw having to do Kanto because of how good all the teams were. But I think we've come up with some good rankings. I don't think we've said anything outrageous either. But yeah, I'm excited to watch a Kanto division just because of how good all the players and teams are, and I'm excited to see who wins.
Absolutely. It's going to be a fantastic season. So hopefully, I know my Week 1 battle should be coming up, probably in about should be coming up this afternoon, Saturday. So we'll see at least who the teams kick off in action. We've seen some other battles happen. Maybe we can get some other, if there's any other coaches who are creating some content, we can get their personal thoughts on their teams or anything. So that's going to be it for us. If there's anybody out there watching, thank you guys so much for checking out these teams, these power rankings with Naim and me. We're both super stoked for this league. I'm super stoked to be playing in it. He's super stoked to be watching it. So thank you guys so much again. Check out for some more content, and have a great day.
Yep. See you later.